Good afternoon and good evening, and thanks for stopping by. Our dedicated team will guide you through with the latest updates and theories at Starbase, Texas. Channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon for future streams.
9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We live.
We're live, okay. G'day, welcome to Starbase Weekly episode 209. Let's get a little audio check going on in chat for us. And so we had a failed attempt at a rocket launch on last week. Okay, audio sounds good. Oh, there's an echo in the intro. What about my voice? Hopefully there's no more echo. So we've got, and on that day we did a flyover, as we can see on the screen right now. That's the flyover. That's an image of just at the point of ignition. We're getting 5x5. Seems good now. Cool. Everything's audio is good. Thank you very much, chat. So there's one of our better images of a different angle of the launch this week, just on the point of ignition. But we're going to go over to Massey's first, like we normally do. But first, we'll introduce our crew. So today we've got BJ with us again today. G'day, BJ.
Thanks, Stephanie, and thanks everyone for joining us. Yeah, it's a little bit of a bummer that we didn't get our launch this past attempt, but rocket didn't explode, so that's always good.
It's always good when they don't explode. Just ask BO, I guess. And also we've got Ryan Hansen. G'day, Ryan Hansen. Awesome to have you on the show as well.
Yeah, hello everyone. Yeah, as BJ said, the rocket didn't explode. It's always good, and it's interesting to kind of see unique things happen. We've never had a full stack ignite and then abort to launch. It's always kind of been as soon as the engines go, we lift off. So it was an interesting scenario, kind of a unique situation. So I'm glad we got to see some unique stuff, but hopefully we get a launch off here in the next week or so.
Oh, there you go. There's a positive take on it all. And Event Dudes is going to look after questions and donations for us. So, g'day, Event Dudes.
Good day, and to that effect, we do have a donation, $20. I don't know if we should be pronouncing names or not from PayPal, but I'll just say Will. And for Mauricio from Yazada. Oh, that's my bad.
Nice. Okay, let's get started on masses. Okay, masses. So a little, my mouse is playing up with fractions. I haven't got the proper mouse pad. Okay, let's go over to the flame trench first. So a little interesting development is the removal of the two triangle frames at the top, one of which was to suspend the squeeze arms, one pair of them, and the other one was that single vertical actuator on both sides. I did notice since then they've put an upside down triangle back in its place on one of them, which is unusual. What do you think's going on there, BJ?
Yeah, I'll be curious to see when we can get flyover images of it, because it seems like it may be just a positioning change that they had. Whether we never really saw them actually hook up those those rams to the forward flaps. But yeah, I think it's the two on the ramp. I think are the ones that were put back in, because you can kind of see those pads that are on the ends. They're on the top. They were on the top once they were kind of inverted. So instead of it being an arm with that brace downward, it's braced upward. But yeah, I think it's just a positioning thing. Maybe they found that how it was the first time didn't quite work, and that's why we never actually saw them use it.
The one with the actuators on it. Yep, okay.
But yeah, they've done a bunch of hacking. I mean, I can't quite tell. I'd have to do it and a little bit more looking to see if those are completely new or if they've somehow like reused some of the ones that were there. Obviously, pretty much all of them have been cut and mangled. So perhaps the ones that did go back up were built out of some of the components. Well, no, because you can actually see there that those are the one set, and then the set with the frame on there. Yeah, so it's probably completely new stuff.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe it was reusing some of the scrap, but doesn't seem so.
Actually, Stephanie, can you go zoom back in on the ones on the ground? It almost kind of looks like they've got like or the ones on the ramp maybe. It kind of looks like there's almost like a coupler on the one on the right, like almost like maybe they're just sitting on some extra steel they had laying around. But oh, that's probably what it is. They're just laying there so they can rig them up. Yeah, that's probably what that is.
Yeah, and I think
So
I think that's in there to flatten it out, because they kind of, when they're upright, there's like I don't know, it's probably bigger than it looks, 3 or 4 foot square pad there, and it's probably because it's hanging down underneath, those other spaces are there to just kind of keep it all flat.
Yeah, these are definitely shorter, so it's kind of like, if they're attached in the same spot, the geometry is going to be a little bit different. So, kind of begs the question whether or not they, reused any components or if it's just what we see there on the ground.
So something to look forward to in the next flyover or two. So yeah, and there's still we got the protection down here from the slag, or whatever you want to call it, the sparks and the welding blobs of hot metal. I guess we call it slag. Okay, so not much more. Oh, there's some new scaffold from last week. But while we're down the back here, the bit of trenching they're doing has advanced. With the water here, remember, I'll just go back here. Remembering when they did Macy's Way, they put in new water pipes for the water mains into about here. So I'm sort of guessing that they're running water all the way along the side here. I don't think that's digging. I don't think that's digging. It's only a jackhammer for now. But I imagine they're going to run a water line all the way. And I'm guessing they're using it to fill the water deluge eventually, like they will at the launch site. And perhaps to fill these as well with water.
Yeah, it looks like they're also going to have it for fire as well, because if you look next to those blue water pipes where they're stored, there's actually a fire hydrant sitting there as well.
Okay. And I'm thinking this is just drainage tubes, so maybe they're running a new drain in the same trench from over here, perhaps. Kind of looks like a drainage thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, with the circles in the side, that's not electrical, that's drainage vault.
Yeah. So that means they won't need to bring the trucks in so much with the water. Well, I mean, it's more about having the water mains hooked up, I guess, like the rest of the sites are going to be. Okay, now moving along. The big new crane we think, is that at the launch site, BJ? Is that what we see hidden over in the back of near the flame trench walls?
There is one over there, but I'm not sure that it's the GMK that was previously at Massey's. I think that was used to lift the landing tank in. And I would imagine maybe it just left.
Oh, hang on, what? The landing tank, the landing tank
A couple weeks ago when the LOX landing tank was put back into the bird cage, that GMK was what did that lift.
Okay.
I think the LR was busy with other things, so they didn't want to tie it up with moving around to do the other projects.
Okay. Now, this test stand has got some new plumbing like what we see on the static fire stand. I don't know we've seen that before. And I'm not sure what on earth it's in aid of.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what commodities they're using for some of the cryo testing. I mean, I know they've always used inert gases in the past, but I wonder if there's a change into what they're loading for those tests that they feel they need to have some suppression on this stand.
And I'm thinking, is that nitrogen also coming in? Perhaps that's new as well, isn't it? These coming in the side, perhaps they're going to flood under here with nitrogen. And so you're suggesting they may load with methane when they do a cryo test?
I wouldn't think so, but I mean, I guess unless it's actually unless it's there to drain stuff out. That, I mean, obviously there's no engines, there's no like engine chill, but there's we don't exactly know what all four pipes underneath in the hinge necessarily do. I think there's a combination of maybe even some liquid vent return or something in there as well that maybe they're capturing.
Okay. Like basically a Lux waterfall or something of that type. Maybe.
Yeah, I've never been.
Definitely something that's common between, I guess, static fire and this. I mean, the first thought that kind of came into my mind, which I'm not entirely sure if this really makes a lot of sense, but if they'd, wanted to reconfigure this to be a static fire stand only in the future, that, if they already have some of the duplicate, equipment on it, then that would kind of lessen the load later on. But I'm not sure I really like that idea. I still feel like it's, yeah, maybe something along what BJ was saying, where related to maybe some of the drains or the pipes near the flaps.
So it's got like an open top by look at a flange and a flex line. Like and that's, where are we? That flange is outside the circle of the ship still. Oh, so maybe hook into that. Is that where that's where the outer flaps are too, aren't they? They are too, aren't they? Yep. Yeah, that's its orientation, yep. Okay, that's interesting. So then what BJ was saying with the pipes under the flaps being right there.
Yeah, and I don't think we've ever, even like when Sean and some of the other photographers have gone to the river to try and get photos from the backside, I don't think I've ever really gotten a really good image of where some of these manifolds actually tie in to the actual into the ground side hardware.
Okay. How's chat going? Chat's going along nicely there. Okay, over here. So I guess that's all we can really say about that stand for now. Yeah, it is. To turn it into a static fire stand, I mean, you have to chop out that massive bits. I mean, it's obviously possible, but that's a major change. And at the same time, though, they are also now working on this cryo stand by taking off. Is that like the remnants of an old tank? They just cut literally the tank off there?
That was the supports. That was the gussets that they used to secure the aft of what I think it was 39-1 when it was on here, because it didn't actually have a clamping aft. It was just a bare barrel edge.
Yep, so taking it up. And over here, there's some either templates or something to go on top of these. So I've seen over the year pretty well, the months or so, we've seen them playing with those rams on the side over there. So I'm just wondering if they are reconfiguring it for another test. Like if they're going to turn that into static power stand, they would need this stand back, I'd imagine, but I can't see them going backwards. Personally, like Ryan said, that is a thought, but I don't think they'll turn this into a static power stand. It'd almost be easier to build a new stand, to be honest.
Yeah, the only way to me, the only reason to change that to a static fire stand would be is if they were going to install a Massey's style flame diverter somewhere at the Cape for ship testing out there, and they were going to barge it over there. I mean, but then again, you could just build another one as well. I mean, the whole build another one seems plausible for just about any of the scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, relatively speaking, I mean, these stands are not that hard to build. I mean, and you probably actually require a lot more infrastructure for just doing the cryo test than you need for a static fire scenario. So yeah, building a brand new one, if they needed another one for a static fire stand would make a lot more sense, I think.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot more. The cryo ones are a lot more complicated than just a static fire stand.
They're also
then
still nowhere near, the throughput to require, multiple of the stands. I mean, as we saw like in the previous weeks where they were kind of playing musical stands where they had, 41 come out and 40 and kind of switch back and forth. So, I mean, if they were operating at maximum throughput, they're still not really, eclipsing the point where they absolutely have to have another stand or another trench right now.
Yeah, like 2 static fires and 2 cryo tests within, what was it, within 72 hours? That's pretty good cadence just with those 2 stands on their own anyway. I mean, with the 2 test stands and the 1 flame trench, that's pretty good cadence anyway. Okay, so there's more than likely this is getting rigged up for yet another. It's highly possible this is getting rigged up for yet another test article, which once again people keep asking why haven't they finished with version 3 yet, but my only reply to that is perhaps still they're trying to get the ship to lose more weight and continuing to test lighter and lighter design ideas perhaps. Okay, so that's pretty well those. Down here, let's see this photo. No, just one sec. This photo will do. This thing is beefy as. That's really interesting design. There's like 4 heavily braced arms in here with something on the ends of them. There's these 6. This isn't the best photo here. Let's find another one. It's got these 6 things that are, I don't know whether interfaces or sensors.
Yeah, I can't make sense of it. I mean, it seems even the hole in the middle even seems too small to be related to a LOX landing tank. But I mean, that kind of screams out as the most likely suspect. But that's kind of tied up into its own test structure right now. So maybe it's something completely new that hasn't rolled yet and we haven't seen.
Yeah, it's definitely strong. Okay, we'll go have a look at the Locks Landing tank. Let's try and get this more side shot over here. This is okay. Because someone put a crane in the way, didn't they? Over here there's some new plumbing that appears to be the hexagonal shape. So more than likely some hydraulics to go up on the top frame. On the top, new top, I should say. Here, sorry, the new top up here.
Yeah, I mean, you got the accumulator right there, so that would make sense.
Yep. They've added the top here and a whole set of pipes have been plumbed in. Looks weird with just a little tiny nose sticking out the top. They've started to put these together. Boy, that's beefy. Look at that. Far out. So, I guess down the bottom, I think we could see it over. Oh no, I can't see it there. But this one here also is getting attached to the top. So that's all happening. Well, whatever they're doing inside this cage, they're going to be able to push hard, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's almost
Okay,
comical to see those big beefy frames attached to those relatively small tubes. It's it almost kind of makes you wonder why they didn't just complete and, make a new box to go in there instead of reusing the tube.
Yeah, I was
that's
about to say the same thing. It's like as lightweight as the original structure was, to put this much onto it, just like cap it at the base and just like all of the stuff above the catwalk there, just replace it all with for what you really need.
Because yeah, they easily could have done some box tubing instead of just reusing that existing, round tubing, and probably would have been a lot stronger and less welding of, all these little adapter plates to make it work.
well, even those structures, I mean, the amount of steel and everything, you would, yeah, that's a good point. Anyhow, like to say, it is what it is. It's crazy. SpaceX crazy stuff. Now, this test tank has, we put it in our episode, but the press lines have been removed on that side over there for this tank as well. And now this week, a lot more of the rods have been removed. Well, some more anyway. And we can see them down yonder, down here. They're the OG ones, and they're the ones coming off 39.1. So there's only like 4 come up so far. Okay, just zooming out now. So the squeeze arms are still down in there. I'm not sure whether we can see these actuators still in place. In fact, oh no, there's one there. Okay. So I'm not sure if they're ready or not. I mean, whether they've finished it up or not. They seem to still have the air equipment here, so maybe they're still, from time to time, jumping inside still. I'm wondering, does that mean they're still doing these tests down here as well as the squeeze test? It's next to impossible to tell.
Yeah, I don't think if they've been doing any testing on that, none of it's been under cryo, so it's all ambient level stuff. So I don't think anyone's been able to notice anything. So perhaps it's still that they're configuring stuff, but it seems like it's been long enough that could have been already into the testing with the squeeze simulator, with the chopstick simulators.
Yeah, I noticed too. I thought they were going to pull the grid pin sims out of the socket, but they're still in there. So that, I think it was Ryan, we were talking about putting these in on the last live stream. That was really tricky to thread them in through there with not only the the outside cage sort of in the way and the bars up the top, but also the grid pin simulators are still in place.
Yeah, it seemed like it took them a couple of tries on, I think at least one of the sides to kind of get it down there. But yeah, they probably just reconfiguring maybe some of their rigging to get it to do exactly what they wanted it to do.
And of course, there's the massive elephant in the room. There's yet more concrete. Now, I think this is going to be more than just replacing concrete. There's some kind of trench or some kind of further excavation going deeper. And there is some marks over here. There's even a line across here. I guess is where that trench is probably going. What are they picking up over here? What's that? Oh, they might be picking up commodities. Huh. If they're going to pick up commodities, you'd think they'd come over here. Anyway. So I'm thinking I need some kind of new base for some kind of test stand, maybe for that, or like they did over here and then didn't do anything. Over here they redid a slab over here. Maybe something to do with this. I guess we're not going to tell in time. Okay, so over at that, I can't see any. Obviously, B21 now is here doing cryo testing. I'm wondering whether it only did. What happened? It only did a Harper cryo test, didn't it? And they detanked PJ.
I haven't been following it too closely, and I did find it a bit. I thought boosters they like marathon did both tests back to back, but it seems like they've separated them this time around. So I don't. Maybe I'm just not remembering how the booster cryo testing flow is and what the details are. If they've changed it, I could just be that I'm not remembering.
Cool. But,
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Just
Ryan,
real
I'm wondering
quickly.
if they're testing the new tanks. Oh, sorry, Bent Dudes.
Yeah, just to clarify, yeah, they did the normal gas test, nitrogen test, which we all saw what that happened on a previous booster. And then they just did this partial fill. It was kind of interesting on this particular test because they do this weird super pressurization release, so it frosts the tank over more than what you actually see the frost line go up from just normal cryo liquids. But they did do a partial fill on both tanks, and they've done very weird things on each test. There's not been a test that seems to be the same as we've moved forward here. So we're still kind of testing out different procedures and still waiting for a normal full cryo, just, dump it in, not this super frosty release pressurization thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just looking back at my spreadsheet, and it was like, 19 spent 8 days out there, but it came back 3 days after the first recorded test that I have, and booster 20 was the same. It returned 3 days after, so I guess tomorrow maybe would be at the 17th as the first recorded test, so maybe it'll come back in the next day or two.
Okay. So is Booster 21 still there? Sorry, I have not been keeping up this week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if maybe the partial test might have been something to do with commissioning these tanks even, because like I said the last live stream, I'm pretty sure they're ready to be used with these pumps. I'm wondering if they actually tried these pumps for the first time instead of using the old ones over here. I'm not sure about all that. That's just a guess. That's just a wild guess. Probably nothing in it. Over to the front. 1 second. There's nothing really to see in this photo. Over the front, there's only really that whatever that is, that ring, don't seem to have done anything with it this week. We can see a heap of the actuators that come off the test tank. I think some of these are the ones that were pull downs on the actual grid pin sims. So not a lot in there. So there's our half hour for Massey's. So we'll go into questions and donations. I noticed you answered a question in chat about the land swap event. Just for just so it's on the YouTube video for others to hear later on. What was that question and answer, please, about the land swap about Massey's?
Yeah, we've been having a good time in chat over here. Doc John 4057 asking about, speaking of Massey's, did they get the land swap? Did that go through? And as I was replying back and forth and everything else, the current status is as follows. They have finished the FONSI, which is the necessary requirements in order to investigate the impacts, if you will, of this actual land swap. They have done the final draft for the environmental. And in that draft, there's several provisions and elements that SpaceX has to agree to, including land swap, but other things like building a observation for the last shot, and several other implications about how they would use the land in investigations if they find any artifacts, because this was a artifact-rich site. But of course, as all things go, there is a lawsuit, and the lawsuit itself is still pending. It's in federal court. There's not been a reply yet from the parties. There's just been the complaint. The interesting thing about that lawsuit is that there is no request in it that I saw about holding or, stopping, as it may do an undue, unchangeable effects, which is odd. They did, if people remember, in the whole TCEQ, EPA, deluge, water spraying off, they did request, and it was denied, for them to hold operations. And this is how we learned about the operations at Starbase and what it costs per day and everything else. So that's basically the run of the idea of what Massey's is. And going to donations, we have a $20 donation from DMHMT saying towards rental and fuel for any additional flowers this launch cycle. Peace. And then we have James Wilson and saying price of propeller juice has gone up. Let's keep RGV in the air for $10. We have Yazada for $5 saying towards Mauricio's goal. And then we have our very own Indie Star saying thanks for all for sharing so much knowledge, both from the commentators as well as the smarties in chat. Y'all rock for $49.99 American. And then we have Turtle Sanctuary saying, as a joke, I'm hoping, is Indie Star feeling okay? Her voice sounds a little pony for $20. And clarifying that Turtle Sanctuary for another $10, saying I meant horse, as all kinds of double entendre jokes on there.
Awesome. That's awesome
And
support, everybody.
just as my own curiosity, since I was doing this, we've been talking about the cryostation, and we haven't been using the cryostation because we now have new cryostation called the Superstructure GSE Gantry Thingamajig flame trenching, wing flapping majigger. So do y'all see that as the future, or are we seeing maybe a combination of the cryostation will come back and then they'll do flap and static fire on the gantry flame trench, or what's y'all's thoughts on that?
I'll pass someone over to Brian.
Oh boy. I think that the kind of the gantry for the flap testing was kind of a stopgap. Like they wanted to build a structure, but they didn't want to spend a bunch of time developing that, where the cryostation currently was at. Because as you can see, it would be kind of difficult to build a similar structure in the same location with the existing hardware. So they also had some pretty significant foundations for static firing over at the trench. So they kind of, two birds, one stone kind of thing. decided to erect that there. Now, it is a little odd that they do the cryos there versus at the cryo station. Now, there may be some specific reasons on why they do that that we're just not aware of. Um, it does seem like maybe in the future the cryo station could be used again. I've kind of toyed with the idea of maybe they continue to use the ships on the trench to do cryos and static fires, but maybe they, have another station for booster in the off chance that they get to that throughput where they kind of need two stations. But I don't know. It's kind of tricky. It does kind of seem like they kind of want the current, ship cryo station, or I guess maybe the old one, to be more of like a structural test stand stopgap. But I guess we'll just have to kind of see.
Cool. Thanks for that. Sorry, throwing you into the fire there. Good on you. Good answer. Thank you. Okay, sorry. More questions about dudes for masses.
I was trying to clarify one, but yeah, DMHT or DMHMT was referring to a photograph, but the principled idea, and I don't know if we have this up right now, but the idea is what land are we talking about around Massey's? And just to clarify, it is effectively the plots of land that are left and right of. Okay, that's easy enough. Yeah, the red basically. But the idea is they're going to get land very near it, albeit there is a pseudo oxbow in the way, but they can just bridge across or whatever they're going to do. And that would be the, in theory, expansion that they would do for whether they're separating R&D and then the traditional flow of production or whatever else is going to be going on there.
And one thing to note, I guess, about that chart there with all the red is keeping in mind for like static fire testing or certain testing, they may need to have a certain setback distance between where the testing is occurring and where the public is at. So some of that red you can probably pretty easily rule out that is not going to be part of like a Massey's expansion. You're probably looking basically what's circled in the yellow there would be the area where they would probably do anything if they, especially if it requires static fire testing, so they can maintain that kind of 1 mile setback between where it would be at and the highway.
There's already a flame trench here, so maybe another flame trench over here or something silly like that, or something like that. Cool.
I'm gonna swing a gas shell. I don't really want to talk about Starship right now.
Sure.
Oh, you do want to talk about it?
Oh, you mean about the launch?
Yeah, well, there's a couple questions regarding it. I'm just kind of curious what your direction, what you're feeling like.
No, we might leave them for the launch site, please.
Sounds good.
So we're ready to move on to Sanchez?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sweet. Okay, Sanchez. So let's start with so all four, they were there last week. So one of these had disappeared last week, one of the middle sections of the second level. This week the second one has gone missing, so there's only two left here now. But a corner piece has arrived, so that's kind of funny. And also on that same sort of note and theory is, I know that went anyway. I was thinking maybe that they're stealing parts to prioritize 37's OLM. I know we've got some photos coming up, but are all the parts for the middle level OLM at Roberts Road there, or were there some missing still until recently?
Best I could tell is that they were missing two center sections. I saw four corners and two centers, but the tent might have prevented us seeing the remaining two, or the two that disappeared from here have went there, and maybe a similar thing happened with the deck plate with the top decks too. I don't know. Seems like a lot of transport back and forth, to continually going back and forth, given the fact that 3 of the 4 top deck pieces have disappeared from here, and I don't think at this point, I don't think they're at Starbase anymore.
No. No, they're kind of hard to hide, those real big items, aren't they?
If I recall, too, related to this, I think didn't the second corner piece arrive since the flyover as well? I think the last one I saw arriving wasn't this one.
I have no idea. I haven't really been in the chats
I
the
think-
last few days.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and double check, but I'm almost positive a second corner has shown up in the last day or two.
But no corners for the bottom level.
Yeah.
So it seems 37 has priority over pad 1 at the moment. It's sort of what I'm sort of getting the vibe about. But yeah, moving on with Starbase and pad 1. So these are the braces that sit on the very floor of the flame trench, I'm pretty sure, and these are the ones that go along further along the flame trench. A couple of the manifolds for this flame bucket are here, so they'll sit at the top, like in here. If you imagine the tubes are all in the back. The flame tubes bucket tubes are all down here. The manifold will be all that at the top. They're at the top, obviously. So the water deluge the big pipe tees off into two. One goes into there and one goes into there for either side of the bucket. These are the new, I'm 99% sure, these are the new main control skids for the main locks and methane. I think I've worked out by the direction that this one is the locks and that one over there is getting built and should be in a mirror. The outlet pipes on this one go away from us. I think this one here, the outlet pipe should come towards us because that'll get spun 180 degrees around for the methane side. I think that's right. Does that sound right, BJ?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact direction of the plumbing in them, but yeah, it definitely jumped out at me when I saw it first and was like, yep, those are the two main skids.
Well, I remember the methane side being, if we're looking at it from the bunker towards the tower, like towards Highway 4 on pad 2, that the methane was the right-hand side, was the outlet of these skids going up. So it goes up a bit and then towards the OLM and then up further. So in here, there's this piece in here. We can see that, I think it's that one there. I'm not sure where that one goes yet. It might be slightly different on the methane side, the back end of it. But yeah, main methane and locks. So we thought maybe they were getting put in before. Well, we entertained the idea that maybe they'd get put in before they actually put the GC bunker down, but that's obviously not happening. Basket strainers. There's basket strainers to be put. I'm pretty sure there's basket strainers here before this manifold gets put on. Two of them there. The associated plumbing with, well, there's another one of those redundant wires. So yeah, that's all those parts are pretty well put in there. Over here we have a new, I'm guessing a brand new SQD arm, at least the heel anyway, section here.
Yeah, it
You
kind of makes
sure
sense. It makes sense that to build a new one, just because that other how old the original one was, and knowing what it looked like underneath the paint. But I didn't necessarily expect it, but lots of parts have shown up to prove that they're going to do it.
Yeah, it kind of gives a lot of mixed signals because, like, kind of what you were hinting at earlier, Stephanie, there's certain aspects that seem like they're, trying to speed up with pad 1 construction. Obviously the trench, they've made a ton of changes to, seemingly get that kind of constructed quickly. But then with the OLM, we see like this complete stoppage of work that kind of implies that it's not a priority. And then we also see stuff like this where, instead of, remodeling the existing QD arm that they, would build one from scratch. Yeah, there's a lot of conflicting things, but yeah, that certainly looks like they're gonna build a new QD arm. It could be a new arm, or maybe it's a spare for some reason. Later on, I guess I'm not really sure, what to make of it quite yet. We'll have to see what they do with the arm that's on the tower when they take it off.
Yep, and 37 has its arm, doesn't it, BJ?
It's being built, yeah.
Yeah, cool. There's some more parts over here. I'm not sure whether they're... Oh, they're... Oh, I see. I thought maybe they laid out in a shape for a reason, but no, they're just laid out because they're inside their white line now, I see, for vehicle access.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of the filler plates for when they start assembling the OLM.
Yeah. So that's almost built for a semi-trailer. I think Matt might have worked it out the other week. So it actually looks like they can actually bring a semi-trailer through here. Big old 18-wheeler.
It would make sense for offloading, pull in one way, circle around under the crane, lift the stuff up, and then the truck can leave.
Yeah, because there's quite a lot of stuff to get offloaded. So for now, it doesn't... I'm still wondering where on earth they're going to build this flame bucket. I mean, it was here last time, but it kind of looks a bit busy there right now. But, I mean, surely that stuff will be removed soon and this stuff might go over to where they built the last one over yonder. They might build the other SQD arm over yonder where they built the last one. And then maybe there is enough room here for the flame bucket to be built like last time. Okay, over here there's some more. I thought there was already enough of the pipes here, but when I saw Chrome Kiwi did a little render in on X and showed that there was actually still about a quarter of them missing from previous flyovers, but it seems like more have arrived now. Once again in bits and pieces, dribs and drabs coming into here. I guess we'll go more into Florida later through the week about how the flame bucket progression's going over at 37. Interesting to see a bit further ahead than here as well. So maybe someone suggested, Ryan, that maybe they're looking to get at least one tower on each site first and then go on to the second towers. So that would put 37 a priority over pad 1.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't think there's necessarily one site that's a priority. I think that it's a bunch of the sites. It's still about the plan of getting multiple launch sites up and going within a fixed amount of time. And so I think they're just prioritizing small tasks in order to make that the end game to be shorter than if they just completely prioritized everything on one launch site at a time. Inevitably, that would probably take longer than if you kind of distribute
Yeah.
the workload and do specialized construction here and there.
Yeah, kind of keep it a bit more parallel. Okay, so this week, I think last week, yeah, they'd made a new one already, moved that one. This week they have painted that thing, that whatever platform that's designed for. And I think last week they'd moved this stand as well, that construction stand. So what else here? I think that's pretty well it in this little area as far as new stuff. We have another flyover coming up this week, hopefully for the launch. That's a new thing. I'm not sure what it is.
It's I think that is the frame that there's a set of bank of accumulators in the GSE bunker that was on a similar stand to that.
Okay, cool. Have these types of pipes, there's been ones with the expansion joint in the middle, they've been coming and going a little bit too. There was some more here than we saw them on a truck, and now there's some back here. Not sure if they're OLM stuff or GC stuff, bunker stuff.
Yeah, my hunch on a lot of that we saw recently in a couple different locations is that that's all the interior plumbing for the base of the OLM, but because there's a lot of a lot of matching pieces as if it eventually can make that nice square run around the base.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, they slide them in from one side and then put the corner piece in there and weld it all together.
Yeah. There's some more random SQD parts. This area was cleaned up. There's still a couple of racks got pulled out. I'm thinking that rack's new. This area's been cleaned up too, a bit. I guess over here we're going to see soon enough a heap of GSC work with plumbing over here in the near future. Otherwise, there's not much to report on over that area. Move over to the scrapyard quickly, which is rather lacking turntables. They're gone. The gone tables. 18 lives. 18 gets to see another day. Lives to see another day. You think about all the storage here, then you remember that there's a whole row of containers right along the front of this site. There's a massive amount of storage on this site for lots of little things. And maybe a little hideaway for a worker if they're not feeling like working that day. Doesn't every work site have a cupboard people can go and hide in? Okay. We saw sitting on a frame something sitting here in the last flavor. I guess it could have possibly been the actual article to put in here to test, but it's vanished, so not sure about that.
Yeah, I remember seeing that and thinking that it would go in there, and then like so many other things, you see it one week and then it mysteriously disappears. I was excited to see those catwalks for the Gigabag bridge crane arrive this week.
Yep. Yeah, I used a bit of your guidance in Patreon Lounge, with a few different things like that. I wouldn't have known that's exactly what they're for, but thank you, yep. Now you say that, it's quite obvious what they are.
Yeah, thanks to that one interior post that they made, you can look at it and go, yep, you can see the spacing of it and all the way the handrails are configured. It's pretty obvious.
Yeah, very good. Nothing much more over there or down in here. That thing gets... Hang on. There's another one of these down... Hang on a minute. Just hold my beer, hang on. Is there two of these things? Didn't I see another one of them down here? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a totally different piece, but yeah, it's some kind of load spreader. That other one looks like it's some kind of center spine for a 3-spoked lifter. So you can see in the middle, it's got that same kind of center post as some of the like the top bar of some of the I think it's the Whipple trees that have that, but the two sides are a little bit different. I'd be curious to see what kind of, if we were closer, we could see what that text is on the side of that thing, because I think it's been there for a few flyovers now.
Okay. One of those things you don't notice till you notice it, and you go back and think, oh, that's been there for months. Okay, cladding being awake, moving along.
Matt will be excited over here because there's new transformers at the Megapacks.
I know, right? So they've got the last one for this set, and they've got the two new for this set, and all the wiring's sitting out, so I'm guessing that we'll see 8 more Megapacks rock up very soon to fill that pad. And I'm still expecting to see this repeated even through here yet, maybe, or at least here anyway, but maybe through here. We'll see. I do like this new design, more compact, more elegant design than this sort of system they had. It's like they've hired a whole new level of designers and engineers. Some of the, I don't know, over the last sort of 6 to 12 months, engineering and designing have sort of taken a whole, much more elegant, much more sort of practical, better looking systems like everywhere.
Yeah, I don't really follow a lot of the Megapack stuff, but I have a feeling that a lot of that packaging is less to do with SpaceX and Starbase and more just to do with how Tesla and the Megapacks have evolved with the newer generations. Because I
Okay.
feel like at that one big installation, I forget where it is. Matt would be able to easily say which one. I feel like that's kind of the common configuration now with the way the packs and the transformers are just stacked up for endlessly, it seems.
Yeah.
It's the Tesla factory in Austin.
Yeah.
And down here, I know we've discussed it, but they've had pumps hooked up to that tank, and this thing hooked up to this tank, and there's some pumps in here, and there's some plumbing. I think there's a tank down there. There seems to be a circle thing in some of the flyovers there. Not sure what they're doing there, whether they're exposed that tank down there, and they're doing some kind of maintenance, pumping the solids out of this. Maybe that's a digester that gets solids in it as a water treatment plant. I'm not sure what they're doing there, but they're doing something in there. Okay, I'll move across again into the excitement part of the area. So they've assembled the, what are we calling this? A rolling gantry crane.
Yep.
Which I still think might be to construct the big girders for the bridge cranes. Oh, this. Go on.
Yeah, it would make sense if that was that they would need something heavy lift for moving those big girder sections around. Yeah, I didn't even know where you were about to say when I said that. I didn't even notice those ones over there.
All
So
this
BJ,
stuff. Go.
so when it comes to the bridge cranes, would they potentially offload them over here and then attach them to this kind of mobile crane system and then drive that over into Gigabay, like piece by piece? Because they've got the three main sections that they've got to put in there. Is that maybe how you envision that happening?
Yeah, because I wouldn't see any way that they'd offload them directly into the bay, and that this would be a good way to transport them in there and position them. Especially given the fact that kind of the timeline of when we saw the bridge crane girders arrive for KSC, but it was quite a while before they went up. So it would make sense that they'll store them out here in Sanchez somewhere, and then when the time comes, they'll have to get them in there, and it'll be an easier way of moving them around because they're going to be limited, and those girders are probably more than what most of the actual mobile cranes could actually lift.
Just going back to last week, to bring those bridge cranes in, aren't they gonna they're gonna have to construct it in here, aren't they?
Oh yeah, and I would imagine that each girder will come in three, and they'll be bolted in place there. But I think just the mobility of moving around within there, getting those segments in there, that mobile gantry is going to be better than trying to lift it with cranes, or like bring it in on an SPMT and then have to crane it up to set it down onto whatever they assemble it with.
Yeah, because those things can sort of move sideways, can't they? Looks like their wheels. Looks like their wheels could turn 90 degrees.
Yeah, so they'd bring in the two, end pieces first, put them on either side, and then drive the center in the middle, and then be able to bolt it together there.
Yeah. Because originally I thought they'd assemble them out here, but then I thought just crossed my mind right now. But then how do you actually get them into here? You can't really get them into here. They really have to be assembled in here. Cool.
I suppose that kind of brings up a question though, because if the beam for the crane is kind of in the middle of the arch on that kind of mobile crane, and they put the centerpiece in there, technically it's going to be straddling that beam. How do they get that crane out of there after they do that? They have to like disassemble the crane, like one side of it, and pull it out.
Yeah,
That's a good
the middles would be difficult. I mean, to get the ones into the ends would be pretty easy. Yeah, I'd have to think
I
on
almost
that, on
wonder
how
if
you'd be able to get it out, how you'd be able to move it around.
You'd almost have to like set it down on an SPMT probably, and then use the SPMT to drive it into the final position.
I drive it in this way.
But yeah, like Stephanie said, I'm not sure that you'd be able to 3-point turn the entire length, especially once you get the first girder in. Getting the second one, if you were to pre-assemble them beforehand, that would be a bit tricky too. Unless, I mean, I guess, yeah, and I don't think the length of it as a total assembly, you couldn't even do it as a like 100% assembled and get it in, because you wouldn't be able to swing the tail around once you get the nose in on one corner.
So these would be able to pick them up, yeah? Of each piece, perhaps, or not? It's pretty heavy, aren't they?
I don't know how. I would imagine, based off the trailers I saw them come in, my hunch would be that they probably wouldn't, especially given that they don't have a high shiv count block here. I think they've only got 1 shiv blocks here. So, I mean, I think the crane could, if you brought in like these particular models can have like 6 to 8 line parts. So at that point you could, but I don't think I've seen any blocks that would be capable of doing it. And I think by the time they do that assembly, I think the roof will be on and those cranes will be gone before they start assembling it. Personal opinion anyways. Because the majority of the roof and the penthouse framing will be in ahead of that.
Oh, of course, yeah. Yep, of course, yep. That's a very interesting question you just raised there, Ryan. How do they, get it back out again?
I mean, we should get a good view of them doing it, assuming they don't put the doors on before this process starts. So hopefully, crossing our fingers, we'll be able to see that process in action.
Yeah. I was sort of thinking maybe we'd see the bridge cranes go in at an earlier stage than Florida, just because of the. I suppose they have to put these trusses in before they can get rid of these temporary braces, just for the priority to try and get a booster broken over as soon as possible. But I guess they can always do that in Mega Bay too.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't think they're really needing that quite yet. I mean, they keep saying they want to launch before the end of the year, but I mean, I think that they've still got a little ways to go, and they may or may not get a new booster. I mean, depending on the production pipeline for boosters and depending on where Starbase is with launches. I mean, we may or may not even have a launch from Florida before the end of the year.
Very good. I kind of forgot to mention at the start of the stream, we've got Silver Six Stones doing their debut live stream for Starbase Weekly on the weekend. So they've had a little bit of practice with show and tell, but this is their debut for the actual proper big show. So far, so good. Everything's working perfectly there. Doing a fantastic job. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, I know from experience, doing the first production of a live stream. Kind of feel like you're responsible that the show goes well. I understand that. Okay, moving on to ship workstations. This is very interesting to see. So we've got so we're seeing some differences. BJ and Ryan, I suppose I'll start with BJ. We're seeing some differences, particular differences with this compared to the ones that are in Mega Bay 1 and 2.
Yeah, there's definitely some interesting parts to this stand, and we've kind of seen it through some of the both our flyover and some other flyovers of the Cape that these the ship stand over here has a weird section where the ring is elevated, and I know, and I'm tending to agree that it may be related to some kind of extra headroom for getting engines underneath, and pretty sure that the lift platform that's next to it, I think, is rotated 180. I think this section where the little fishtail is coming off the one side, I think that actually sits up underneath that raised section.
Okay, because I noticed these legs, they seem shorter too than the ones in Mega Bay 1 and 2.
Yeah, they definitely seem to be. I'm also not entirely convinced that they're shorter. I feel like they might be bigger in footprint that might the proportions might give us an illusion of it. I also think that there's also a little bit of extra height that's built into that's the joiners there, whereas in the first ones that ring was completely flat and went straight to the leg, whereas this kind of has a little bit of a kind of a hip joint at there, whatever you want to call it there, that kind of connects the leg a little bit lower, so that height kind of supplements the leg height.
Yeah. And Megabay 2's workstations, the ship actually sits on the ring, does it not? And this time the ship's actually going to sit on the end of these little arms.
Yeah, which is still flush with the plate, which is still which is flush with the ring. That ring obviously is kind of more like a booster ring stand where it's kind of set back. I'm almost wondering if it has something to do with them trying to make universal the actual like attachment points to the ground where the legs are. Because one of the things that I've been noticing when we see the booster stand that's being constructed at Roberts Road is that the space, it almost seems like the spacing of the ship clamps has been purposely set up so that the ship clamps utilize locations of where clamps are on booster, which is why we kind of see on the breakover fixture why it seems like all of the spacings of things work out to be able to use that same fixture for both ship and booster potentially.
Yeah, that's basically my thinking too, and you're exactly correct, BJ, with the spacing change on. Basically, what they did is like for the ship, the 6 points of that they clamp to are no longer equal distance apart. I know a lot of people still think that they are, but they aren't. They basically, if you imagine like the booster layout where there's the 20 points that can connect to the stand or the launch mount, they basically took the same footprint and just deleted a bunch of the points so that they ended up with just 6 remaining. And that's basically what the ship uses. And so if you do something like that, you are able to kind of reuse a lot of your same mounting positions for the clamps and other things. And also, yeah, with the ring structure itself, that what you were saying, BJ, with the common kind of bolting interfaces, that does, provide a lot of benefits too, because if you go to reconfigure, a stand later on down the road, you basically just unbolt the top part of the stand and move it. You don't actually have to redo a lot of the foundations that it's actually mounted to itself. So it allows a lot more reconfiguration after the fact. And I think maybe in the case of the ship and also the booster, having that kind of wider area for the vehicle to sit on would allow you to actually get better access to the bottom of it to actually do what you need to do. So like up around maybe the base of the skirt. It might be a little interesting with RVAC engines, with spacing. You have to make sure you're not touching the wall, with them or whatever else. But with this, you can see how much more clearance that they'll have around the base of the vehicle to actually position equipment before kind of lifting it up into the aft of the ship.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm obviously not one of those who didn't realize the spacing, but it wasn't until recently that I started to realize that offset spacing that they did do with the new clamps on the ship, that it was to align it with booster clamp locations. I feel like for some reason I figured it was some other reason that the spacing was chosen until more recently when I was like, oh, well, now I know. Now it makes sense why those 4 are in the locations they are. Not that they're somewhat random or some other spacing other than 60 degrees. They're right on that increments of 18.
So I think what it actually comes down to is the forward end of the booster because of the struts the triangular struts that they have on the hot stage area. They wanted the clamps to be in between, and so in order to do that, you have to play nice with the symmetry, which also happens to be a 20-way symmetry, just like the engines. So there's a lot of stuff that is, people, a lot of the 3D modeling, community would know about this, but like when it comes to the symmetry on the vehicles, the ships have always kind of had one kind of scheme and boosters have always had one scheme, but now they've really started to combine a lot of that because the whole architecture is a lot more, combined in terms of its design and efficiency in the way that it works.
It's pretty obvious that the clamp aren't symmetrical. I'm not sure how people have that confused. When we saw these transport stands, it was very obvious there was long arc sections and short arc sections. And the same here, we noticed over here, you can see here there's longer and shorter arc sections over here as well. So there's another whole stand here. So 4 shorter arcs and 2 longer arcs for the ship these days. Thanks, guys. That's awesome. Thanks for all that. So where's it gone? So the new satellite loader's gone.
Yeah, they took it inside to Megabay 2 to install its Pez dispenser the other day.
It left its lid behind.
Yeah, can't really do the Pez installation with the lid on it, right?
I guess, yeah, sorry, that was a silly thing to say. All right, that's cheers. I'm glad you're both here on today's show to go over that stand and all that geometry stuff. That's really awesome, good stuff. And we're the whole community really happy that that discussion happened. Thank you. Okay, so booster cryo stand has now been moved to Massey's. Obviously, there's something out there I want to discuss in a second. This is back. No, hang on. This is back out again after loading 39. 40. Hang on.
Correct.
The number's 40, isn't it? I know the numbers are going to confuse me soon, really bad.
Well, watching this, I got so confused on this one, seeing all the stands make it here, because I was out and about doing a few things during the launch attempt and didn't realize that they had actually rolled both stands to production when they moved the roadblock after the initial, and then all of a sudden they were bringing them back after the abort, and I'm like, but they were in the production site. And it was like I confused myself big time the other day. But it was good to see aft flaps outside in the wild.
Yeah, because we'll have a look at the build site. Where they were is kind of busy right now. Now, so over yonder, there's a barrel section, which is kind of interesting. It's a bare 2-ring barrel section. So it's not part of a ship or booster, obviously. So I wonder what's going on with that.
Yeah, I know the other day there was a number of scrap articles that had left, but I'm not entirely sure if that was even possibly one of them or not.
Okay, cool. So, event dudes, how are we going on questions and donations for Sanchez?
No, we're having a blast over here in chat. So we got a donation
Cool.
from Donald, $25, saying RGV, really great views. And then we have a kind of a combination of questions. I'll just kind of combine it for y'all. Crayman asking about the mobile gantry crane and asking about if it can be used to erect the deluge ramp, especially like the water pipe sections. And then further on to this kind of concept, different ideas. Dean Brilliehart asking, wouldn't there be enough space for the crane's wheels to pass between the center and outer girder sections when transporting the center section?
Yeah, as far as the gantry for obviously it's heavy lift, so I doubt that it has anything to do with the flame bucket, because any of that stuff is going to be small lifts. So I would tend to think not for that. As for the second half of the question, it's not so much that it can't get the girder in there. It's that once you get the middle section between the other two, how do you get it out? Because essentially one side would have to climb over the top of the girder. I think it was the somewhat obvious comment that Ryan had made about that whole thing, because I'm not quite sure how they would maneuver around there if that was what they're going to use that for.
I mean, that's if they put it in the final position, which I feel
Right.
like getting it. I mean, if you're going to get it 95% of the way there, I mean, you should have a solution that just lets you do it 100%. So now there still may be some usage of SPMTs in order to do that. I mean, I think it's just going to be exciting to see exactly how that process works. Obviously, this will be the second time that they do it since they did it in Florida first. But yeah, we'll get to see that hopefully.
All right. And then kind of a secondary question we were talking about the pipework being assembled for what we think is kind of a secondary SQD, and the banter being from C6 R1S could be a future crew access arm, and then Sharpie is jumping onto that about effectively crew launches will be at the Cape, so the idea of it not being built here. And I guess I'm gonna jump on that one and say, since this is the R&D site, do we expect them to be building an R&D style, if it's crew access arm, cargo loading arm, fuel transfer arm, or I don't know what they would be doing, but something like that here as opposed to maybe doing it somewhere else first?
I tend to
Yeah.
agree that I think that I don't think I don't want to say we'll never see a crew launch from Starbase, but I think that will most likely occur out of Florida just because there's additional facilities there that have always supported crew launches. It's a lot more than just having an arm. I mean, you've got to have a lot of extra, infrastructure to support that in general. I mean, even just, crew processing areas and stuff like that. There's a lot. So I'm not to say that it will never happen, but I think that it's probably a lot more likely that occurs in Florida first. And as far as the other stuff goes, I mean, I think for fuel transfer type stuff, I mean, it's that they're going to reuse the same equipment that they have now in order to do that. Like the ships that will beat tankers, they'll still use the same QD arm. They'll just the depots themselves will have a kind of probably a separate QD, either probably higher up on the vehicle or maybe lower, not really sure. But that would actually facilitate the transfer in space. They wouldn't actually connect to that on the ground. So I think that the pipe structures that we see here are the hints that of a beginning arm to replace the one on Tower 1. And it's possible that it could also be a backup one, because we do have this question about whether or not the arm is going to go back in the same spot, or if it's going to, because if it goes back in the same spot, that is going to be for version 3 launches from pad 1. Or no, if it goes back in the same spot, it'll actually be for version 4 launches from pad 1, because the booster will be taller and the ship will be bigger, and so the arm technically has to be moved up relative to like where pad 1 currently has its arm, or pad 2, sorry. There's a lot of numbers going around. But yeah, they'll need to basically move the arm down on Tower 1 if it's for version 3, or they'll have to put it back in the same spot. And so depending on what spot they put it in, they may have to have a little bit different plumbing, which may require like a separate arm to be built. I'm just going to guess that arm is a replacement because I don't want to have to deal with, gutting the existing arm and not destroying it.
Yeah, and since we saw, and we know from watching some of the stuff from 39A that the hinge part of, even though the Tower 1 in Starbase and the 39A arm were initially pretty much identical, they did do some modifications to the 39A one before they put it on the tower, so they would have to at least make some modifications around the hinge areas to the current one, but they may have just decided that building a new one is easier.
Alrighty, and then we have Crayman again saying, are the OLMB spare parts still present in Sanchez?
Yeah, I don't think I've seen any. Yeah, the two arms and the hoods. I don't think the hoods have gone anywhere. I think everything's over there, kind of in the middle. I see two arms, for sure, over on the left.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, the extra parts, and then the 4. I think there's 4 extra. Yeah, I think I see the 4 clamp doors as well. So yeah, all the spare parts are still here.
Oh, okay. We have Brianna Matthews asking, Gigabay door hardware is still not moved. How will they be assembled?
Nope,
Carefully.
it's still all there. I mean, or really, I mean, it's kind of assembly, just like the, I guess what would be similar to how almost the bridge cranes are going to be built. But yeah, it's just, I think there'll be two of those truss structures that'll be bolted together, and then the spreader frames will be stacked up on top, and then they'll add the fabric pieces in between, and then move them over. I imagine they'll build them somewhere over here in Sanchez before moving them over.
All right, we have missing tools asking, I see no work on the breakover jig. Is there any evidence of starting to build a dock at the leased parcel on the ship channel? And I guess I'll answer the second part about absolutely no movement or any construction at the leased parcel on the ship channel currently. There is a 408 submitted to the US ACE because of that being a channel. They have to modify it, and that has to be approved effectively through them. And that has been submitted, waiting on that to go through for the dock and other things they're going to be doing there. But as to the first question, have we seen any kind of movement on the breakover jig as far as work being done?
No, there's not been any work. Yeah, there are. They're doing some things, but nothing real big, obvious stuff. They still haven't painted the ends there, but there are, as you can see, like, equipment around. So they're still sort of working on that. Probably some of the little fiddly things, like some of the plumbing and maybe electronics and sensors and so on, still to be put in. But mostly it's finished.
All right. Woodworker Don asking, did they remove the new elevated cable trays recently installed around the other two side of that Gigabay stand building area? Gone conduits?
Yeah, they did. They did. I didn't notice that before till Don just said so. Yeah, they have. Yeah, that's weird. Anyway, not like we haven't seen that before on Starbase.
Wonder if they realized that it just wasn't optimal to be able to get stuff in and out of there. It does look like there's still some those little black things down there. I guess I can't quite tell what those are.
Yeah, that's where the legs were posted, so they're probably just protecting the bolts for the legs. But yeah, when I saw that in the previous flyover, I thought it was kind of odd that it seemed like they were going to surround the whole thing on three sides and a third of the fourth side.
I mean, you can still surround it on three sides, just have the longest side be the open side. Instead, that way you can just be able to move SPMTs in and out of there in kind of a parallel direction to pull stuff in and out.
I wonder if we'll see, like they were looking at, obviously they were running power around for another one of these power boards for the workers, I'm imagining, over this side. I wonder if we're just going to see a trench dug through here, because everywhere else in Sanchez, they're all over there, they're all underground, all the runs, like those ones, they're all underground. I thought it was kind of odd that they had it overhead anyway, over here. Maybe just something quick and cheap and nasty to put it up over the top would be a lot cheaper, I guess. But I mean, come on, SpaceX. It wouldn't be much different to run an underground from there to there, to be quite honest. By the time you make the steel, bolt the steel in, bolt the cable trays in, all that, you'd almost have a trench dug and conduits and cables run underground anyway. I'm not sure what's going on there, but anyway, they changed their mind once again. Thanks, Vent Dudes.
You're welcome, and that's basically it for questions. And if we're going to move on, we do have a observation from the intro video of Doc John saying, "Whoa, what's going on with the Star Factory receiving bay?"
Yeah. Let's just. All right, let's just start there. Seems like the question was there. I guess they're talking about this office building getting demolished.
Yeah.
Yes, this office building's getting demolished, finally. It's always been a bit of a funny looking thing. Sore thumb, I don't know. It's always kind of weird. I guess it kind of had the shape of an aft flap, but anyway, I'm surprised it took this long to get rid of with their new office building over yonder, over there. I would have thought they would have got rid of that ages ago. So moving on to Gigabay, I'll just drop this one straight into BJ's lap. See what's going on new this week.
Yeah, I mean, the good progress is going on. I mean, there's even a fair bit of progress since the flyover. Kind of this front corner nearest to the image is actually got the last two columns over the doorway here next to Mega Bay 1. So they've got that column in, they bridged that over there. So essentially this quadrant is nearing its completion structurally, which kind of makes sense given the fact that going back, two flyovers and quite a while on the ground images, we've been able to see that they started building the more sections of roof truss down there below. So it makes sense that in this corner that's most complete will be the first ones to start building. But yeah, so they're kind of hidden behind. Yeah, so you've got the shorter ones that we've seen for quite a while, but it's underneath the temporary one, the second temporary structure. And this angle you can see, I'm sure you talked about it last week because this is not a new development, but yeah, the remaining pieces there. So it looks like we've got the two trusses worth of complete segments to be able to continue there when they get there.
Yeah, I was saying, BJ, that see, this is basically I'm calling them triangles. That's basically where, see down here, that bottom bar will go underneath this one. But over on this side, they're making them longer. It's like there's a section first and then that bit. So, because this side is slightly longer. If that's the case, looks like this beam fits exactly in here. And like that bit, that'll go back that way a little bit to bolt up to these bits. So it looks like this is going to have a square section, then the triangle section, if you know what I mean. And then the main truss.
Yeah, since the panel point, essentially the panel points in the webs there kind of alternate where they seam. So you obviously have that kind of it's not really, it's a lap joint kind of to kind of get into a technical jointing.
Yeah, I like timber. Yep, I see. Yep. So going back to this week.
Yeah, so they're getting in there, and they're finally getting around that final corner at the top, in kind of the topmost corner from this image. They're finally started working around there. That particular crane, the last one, it was the last one to climb, and it had kind of had some issues for a few weeks where it hadn't been working. I think some of us speculated that there was some kind of lift line winch issues in the actual crane, so it wasn't working, and so it's kind of fallen behind in terms of its progress. And it's finally starting to make its way around. I think last I counted, we're under 25 columns left to finish off the 7th level in total. I'm kind of surprised that we haven't started to see the door openings on the highway side get closed in, but I think what they're going to end up building is, because that lower level at the top of the 6th level is the bottom of that structure. I think we're going to see them pre-assemble essentially almost an entire wall truss, almost kind of like how the roof trusses are being built. I think they're going to pre-assemble those on the ground kind of as an assembly, and that's why they've waited for the 7th level to be done to kind of build that whole section maybe in 2 pieces and build it instead of stick framing it. I'm not sure how if the beams that kind of spread across there are like 2 pieces, it would be something that would have to be pre-assembled before lifting into place. But yeah, I'm really curious to see when we start seeing some rails start being installed on the bridge crane beams there. It may be something that doesn't start happening until once the roof and the penthouse are being done a little bit more. They'll kind of give us maybe a better timeline on when we might start seeing bridge crane related work, other than having seen those catwalks arrive. It might be sooner than later.
So this is actually the penthouse level here, isn't it?
Nope, that's actually the roof.
Oh, the roof. Sorry, down here. Sorry, this is a penthouse level.
Correct.
We don't see any of the. On Florida, I noticed there's more of the steel in here, isn't there, on this level? We haven't seen yet.
Yeah, because it's the essentially the bottom of the when they lift the roof trusses into place, that bottom chord of the truss is the penthouse floor level, so they can't. That'll be where we start seeing in there. We've only seen that extra part at the top because of the way that the two beams that connect up to the roof trusses cantilever over the wall, and that's why we're kind of starting to see some extra roof framing in that area that kind of resembles how the extension of the penthouse goes into the floor plan a little bit farther. It just happens to be that it's in there. And then if some of the angles, you can actually see where the beam connections are on the inside of those beams. And actually, if you go to the center wall, you can see it. You can see where there's additional tabs there on that level that is the penthouse, because I don't think it goes, I think there's some framework into the next levels. Not all frames have flooring attached to them, though. Kind of on that second level down, you can see all those tabs on the main beams.
Yeah, the middle doesn't have the penthouse, does it?
No, but there is the penthouse goes one work cell from both ends with the doors, but there is structural framing in that next bay over. I don't think all of the sections have it now that we're over on the other side, but you can see attachment points where there's steel there. It's just not, some of that steel is not configured to actually have a penthouse decking laid on it. It's just structural steel.
Is this side going to have, because of the stacking, but is this side going to have a penthouse?
I don't think we've seen enough evidence 100%. I do believe it extends in over the cells a little bit, just like it does on the other side. I think it's fairly symmetrical all the way around around the building, but we'll have to wait and see a little bit more as they get further progress here.
So we should see that steelwork go in before the roof actually gets. That'll still be these cranes' job, won't it?
Yeah, we did do some of the ground images from people who posted photos from the bus tour. Did get some views of where the penthouse floor was framed, because the tower cranes did that, and then got the decking in parts of it before they actually put in the actual roof girders.
Some questions going on about these black parts here, and they're not here. So are they painting this building black?
I think it's just weatherproofing. If you look at Mega Bay 2, you can actually see areas where there's a different coloring around those beams over there. It's just gray, not black. Well, on the side it's black, on the back it's gray. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. Okay. But my suspicion is it's just weatherproofing around those connections. I don't know if they've been having if they've had any kind of seepage in through the sheeting essentially at the connections, or what the purpose is.
Cool. Okay, so that's that half of the build site. Over here, so being a launch flyer, we didn't get lots of photos of all the areas because of the TFR. But here we can see they finished the staircases. Last week we saw that insulation. I thought they put formwork on that front wall, but apparently when the ship was rolling past on one of the Abbott space cameras, you could see that they were actually putting the material similar to this material on the front of that building at Starship Park. Rather than, I thought they were going to maybe put concrete on the front wall, but appears not. Just to finish off the build site, and quickly get over to the launch site. there's this work still going ahead. They put posts up, whether they're deliberately crooked because of the, to put this sort of shade sails up, or whether they're just, I don't know. I guess that's what's going on with it. I have seen that in the past where they deliberately lean the poles out when they put shade sails up, although these ones aren't, but I'm not sure. Unless they're just sitting there and it's like tennis court type fencing and they just haven't, like, because some of them aren't, some of them aren't the same, man. I kind of feel like they're just sort of sitting there, not bolted down properly yet or something.
Yeah, either that or they've drilled a hole in there to put it in. They've just like set it in there, but they haven't like plumbed it up and secured it, tamped it, and concreted it, and all that kind of stuff. It just kind of a pole sitting in an open hole. It is kind of odd, but I'll be curious to see if they're purposely leaned that way so that when they tension them, that they kind of come back into plumb, or if it's some other reason.
No, I've seen them where they stay up at an angle when they put shade sails up. Now I think that's more likely that they're sitting in a dugout hole, yeah. And I mean, we've all done that, haven't we? Dug holes, put posts in, and later on square them up when we put concrete in. Okay, moving up to the launch site, as we can see. No, I'm only kidding. We'll go over to the launch site. And we might let's start with what's going on around the site, actually. And then we'll finish with the actual.
Really quickly, we had a quick question if you got a second.
Sure.
This Smurfy is asking, are the beams poured in place? And this is reference to Gigabay. Or at least we were on that at the time.
Are the beams poured in place?
Yeah, I'm not sure. The question doesn't quite make sense to me considering it's not concrete beams. So
All good?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that one.
Feel free to ask the question again. I hope we want to do that. We'll get back to you. So, some changes. I'm going to zoom. Good. Some changes since last flyover. There's not a great deal. Obviously, the GC building has got 2/3 of its framework put in, which we're kind of expecting to happen very soon. And the crane's obviously laid down for the launch.
And the third piece was put in place after the abort, and the crane was put back up, just to, in full transparency on that.
Cool. Now this is interesting, BJ. It looks like I thought these were just sat here staging, but it looks like because that's the right amount of pipes for the water deluge with the main one, the ridge cap, and the top deck, and a spare. Maybe these are going to be long. So these are just ready to drop straight in the trench, already pre-assembled.
Yeah, when I first saw that, I was like, that I definitely did not have that on my bingo card for the use of it for what those frames were intended for. But yeah, it seems like some kind of essentially a prefabrication frame that they can just kind of drop in place later on, kind of like everything else where they're kind of doing pre-assemblies, is they don't have to do quite as much welding and positioning in situ, essentially.
I wonder, they did have a lot of those smaller lines. So I wonder if they're going to run those underneath maybe. And then instead of kind of having like separate trenches for that stuff, because got a little messy. They had like some separate trenches at times for pad 1, but I wonder if they're going to run like at the small lines on the, like on a concrete, pad below, and then maybe put these over the top.
Yeah, or even they could even stack the frames on top of each other, where those are the smaller ones are still on top, and that way you have a nice level place on there. Because I'm trying to remember what they used to space that over, given the fact that the main water pipes being of a couple of different diameters, obviously you don't have a nice flat surface.
I'm thinking these are only temporary legs too under here, and these extra frames are going to sit right down on the rat slab on the bottom of the trench.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that.
Can't see. Oh, the face hugger's gone. Is that where it was there? Yeah, it was, wasn't it? The SQD plate from last week, and I think the bits of the claw might have gone too now. What else is happening over here? We can't see a great deal just from this one angle.
Yeah, I'm curious
Over here.
I'm curious at the ramp exit of the flame trench there, if that's just gravel sitting there, or if they've actually already poured a rat slab down there.
Looks a little
Does
bright
that
to
look?
be gravel.
Yeah,
Shouldn't we
seems
see
nicely
some?
it seems nicely sloped and kind of up to the where those piles are kind of exposed. So it does almost feel like they've already started getting some blinding layer rat slab going on in there for the trench.
I'd say I was going to say, shouldn't we see some some piles sticking through? I guess that is what we're seeing there, is it?
Yeah.
Cool. I did notice over here. Hang on, do we get a shot over there? I thought we had a shot over there. Over here, yeah. So buried those conduits. But they've still got this open over here, so not quite finished with the water pipes yet, or they haven't quite finished in that area yet. Once again, another crane laying down for launch.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to see newer photos. I'm pretty sure Rover 2 caught images of them starting to disassemble that crane. I don't think I've seen anything leave yet, so I don't know if that short view that we saw on Rover 2 was actually disassembly. It looked like they were unpinning pendants at the time, so I'm not quite sure. We'll have to get another view of there because I haven't seen any newer ground images to say it's still in one piece or not.
I guess its job's done now. They're using a smaller crane around the back, aren't they, to put all that pipes around the back. I guess it's probably done all its heavy lifting now. Oh, sorry, back at Sanchez. Actually, we forgot something.
Oh, Marvin's parts.
Yeah, so the heel and the A-frame are here. I just reminded myself looking at the launch site. So we should see that be reassembled in the next sort of little while.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see. They've definitely been doing a lot of work on the main crane body and whatnot, getting it ready to put those components back on. So sooner than later, I would think it would go back together. Especially since they've been working on over at Huddlestone, they've been working on the development over there. I'm sure they want to get those crane sections out of there soon too.
I was just quickly reading a bit of chat. Okay. Good to see you all having a good time in chat. Oh, that's awesome. Sometimes I feel like I should address chat more, but it's kind of a bit tricky to do everything and address chat. But that's why we have people like Event Dudes over there checking our chat, so it's a good thing. Now, BG, anything else really? I noticed down here they got their last methane pump running this time. So a bit of the timing of things. So we've got sort of pre-launch. I guess we'll get some photos. Your members will get some more photos of the tank farm actually while they're filling. So just at the point of water, so everything's filled up. We're pretty well at T minus odd 5 odd seconds here, 3 seconds here. It's sort of interesting to see the tank farm. I mean the pump farm and tank farm kind of reasonably quiet, and then post launch we can see a bit more venting, so they're depressing the actual liquid nitrogen side here as far as I know. And then over here I guess they're starting to boil up the locks in the pump side of things with this, because on detanking they don't, as far as I know, when they're detanking they don't need the pumps or the sub chillers. So I guess some of the people who are tank farm watchers will be interested in how this is sort of post abort. We can see how the water went all the way out there. Is it one of these photos that shows how far it went out this side as well? Went quite a fair way out. Which one was this photo? No. So we can start with, I'm sure there's going to be a question, start with some of the questions to do with the launch abort, or any questions to do with the launch site. event dudes?
All right. Well, I'm going to start with donations first, but
Sure.
Perpetual Nerd says, chip in if you're able. These guys work hard for $5. I'm going to say Jax, 1986, sent one RGV gift sub. And then we have a big thank you to Troy Rubert saying, thanks for all you do for $49.99. And one second.
Do you get the membership shoutouts? Like, that's one up here. Was it member for 33 months? Booster forward dome. That's almost 3 years. Do you get those ones as well?
I do. They were posted on the stream when that happened, so I feel like everybody saw that. Is the way I look at that.
Oh, okay.
And we have a $27.42, not sure what that's about, from Tobias, saying for fuel and great pictures. And let's just start the first conversations way back. Brian Aries was talking about, do you think Starship will fly tomorrow?
Jeez, where's the magic 8-ball?
Yeah. Short answer for me is no. I think I think we would have need to have seen some vehicle movements or at least closures posted, and even then, I think it would be super tight to speed run it at this point. I think we're going to probably see a couple day delay.
Yeah, I agree. We would have had to see closures by now if they were truly going for tomorrow.
I think we've also seen some interesting stuff in Mega Bay 2 with the ship and a potential Raptor vacuum engine cart kind of going in and being positioned, underneath the ship. It doesn't seem like it's necessarily like attached to an engine or like they've removed an RVAC or anything, but it does seem like they've been kind of poking up underneath the ship as well. Obviously, we don't really get any views inside Mega Bay to see what they've been doing with Booster, but it does seem like maybe there's some other stuff going on that they maybe noticed after kind of going through the initial data. I know we got the post from Elon saying something about Monday after potentially swapping 2 engines, but that was before they even had hands-on with the vehicles. They basically just had data. So who knows? They might have discovered more stuff than maybe what they were initially thinking.
All right. And then adding on to that, we have Ziggy asking the same, or basically saying the same thing. Do you guys think they can make it Monday? And then we had Yazada pointing out that if they expect to fly tomorrow, wouldn't we expect to see both ship and booster roll today?
Yeah,
I would think so.
I think we still understand that there is somewhat a T minus 12-hour minimum for the vehicle to kind of be stacked, because they have kind of a procedure that they run through, including tests that we can see and tests that we can't see, but different pressurization tests, flap tests, grid fin tests, gimbal tests. There's a bunch of stuff that they do during kind of this 12-hour countdown, including tank farm stuff as well, that we don't necessarily see, but it seems like it's been fairly consistent for a long time now, going way back to kind of the initial Starship launches, that there's basically like this 12-hour window where the vehicles kind of have to be stacked for them to go through this process. And so, yeah, we should definitely have seen vehicle movement today if they were going to be stacked and ready to go with 12 hours minimum for tomorrow.
All right. And then Ziggy also asking about, can you see the launch from Grenada, which is an island off the coast of Venezuela? And I'm going to say, if you had tracking, which they do provide, there's some free sources for that, and a good telescope, but it's going to be a very interesting, because you're basically still in sunlight, so it's going to be hard to see that from that kind of angle. But then in theory, I'm going to say yes. I don't know if y'all have any theories about that.
Nope.
Okay. And moving on, we're now talking about last attempt. So, do the abort at ignition during the first attempt of Flight 13. Oh, sorry, this is from Nate the Great. How many engines do you think are damaged due to the fast shutdown? I know that Elon said 2 engines will be replaced, and I'll add to that is, are any of those engines from the fast shutdown, or is it the ones that didn't turn on?
So I think people immediately jumped to the fast shutdown just due to the 10 engine static fire and what we saw there. That was, if you really break down the timing and you look at, how long combustion was sustained during that 10 engine static fire, it becomes apparent like why engines were damaged with that shutdown. In this particular case, the outer 20 engines, which were the last to start up, did seem to sustain combustion for what seems to be long enough to possibly not have caused damage to themselves. I would imagine that, in abort, this kind of goes into a little bit of skepticism, but with that 10 engine static fire, that was the first time they had done anything on the pad. And that a lot of the stuff was probably set extremely conservative to where, if you detect a problem with your deluge system, you want those engines to shut off as soon as possible because otherwise you have the potential to burn through the steel on the flame deflector, especially if there's no water, running through it the way you expect it to be. So I imagine that they probably had a lot of extra cautions in place to prevent damaging effects from that scenario. Now, fast forward a little bit, we've had multiple static fires and a launch all occur on this pad. So they have a lot more data on how these systems interact. And this is kind of a hunch, but I would imagine that an abort for launch would have enough time built in to not have that same issue occur as the 10 engine static fire where they're being like super conservative with stuff. So I think that it's likely that the damage that they've talked about with maybe 2 engines, I kind of feel it's less likely that it would be due to the fast shutdown. It's certainly still a possibility, but I'm wondering if it's more related to the 4 engines that we saw not light up.
Yeah, to me, I guess it feels like one of those environments where, as opposed to like a separate system failing and them having to like shut it down immediately because continuing is going to damage some, it's almost feels like one of those ones where the abort criteria of, okay, I know in the past there's been thrown out the number that like they have 3 engine out capability, and well, 4 didn't go, so that's going to trigger the abort, and it's going to trigger it in a controlled manner as opposed to triggering it in an uncontrolled manner, where the potential for damage to the good engines is probably mitigated, and that's kind of how I kind of look at it.
Yeah, there's basically a threshold point where, the engines attempt to ignite, and then, the computer has to basically do a pull check to see, okay, are all of my required engines firing or not? And that would basically happen at like your launch commit. And at that point, that's when they failed that check because they had 4 out instead of, because I think Elon mentioned that it was a violation of the engine out that they had 4. I believe we've seen Starship launch with 3 out before. I think the first launch was the one that just barely allowed for that because they had the 3 engines out. But yeah, I think at that point that's when they detect that, okay, not enough engines are firing, so we're going to abort this attempt, and that's when everything kind of throttles down safely. I would imagine that that's how it's programmed to run. Otherwise, it would be pretty bad to have to take off like all 33 engines and check them for damage, in the case of a fast shutdown. And I imagine too, with the way that SpaceX operates, they're kind of always trying to improve the efficiency of things. I imagine that after, especially if you look back at the documentary, the first episode, where they were fairly disappointed about needing to take off those 10 engines and inspect them and whatnot. I imagine that's a situation that they'd want to avoid again. So I think it's pretty unlikely that the damage was associated to like a hard shutdown of the engines at the abort.
Okay, and then on that, Tanipa is asking spin prime for new engines, or
Actually, there's been some chat whether they're going to need a static fire on the new engines or just a spin prime would do on the new engines. So once again, it's something if they do need to do that, we'll have to see before the launch, I guess.
I still question the whole viability of spin primes. I mean, we we only saw Booster do that, before the first static fire when they were still learning about the system. Since then, we haven't seen another spin prime on a booster, and it's really hard to see at Massey's, but it also kind of seems, relatively the same way that the ships seem to do igniter tests instead of spin primes now. Um, I kind of feel like igniters are kind of the new standard. If you're not going to commit to a full static fire, that it's probably an igniter test. Which, in all fairness, I mean, the igniter test actually tells you more information than a spin prime would. So it seems logical that if you want to do, the minimum to get the maximum number of information, that a igniter test is probably the standard that you would use.
All right, and switching gears a little bit here, Cream is asking about the SpaceX video. Starships were in dock station at the top. How is that possible with the landing tanks?
Well, we know that HLS isn't going to have header tanks in the nose. That's kind of been a well-established assumption now for a while. What we didn't really expect was that the ship for that Artemis 3 flight, that it would have the docking port, I guess, on the nose. I think it's kind of been assumed that it would maybe be, further down on the side of the ship, but there was always kind of some conflicting, maybe goals to achieve if it were set up in that configuration. So most likely, it seems like is a nose cone that they're probably using that does not have the headers attached in it quite yet. I'll admit it's a little kind of confusing with the renders that they released, because it kind of shows a fully tiled ship, which brings into a lot of questions about, how do they handle the tiles on the tip of the nose? Is it like a dragon style, cap that opens up where there's tiles on it? Because like, if we've already seen with reentry, from especially like the last flight with 39, how it was pretty purpley on the steel, just kind of below that kind of horizontal black line on the tiles on the leeward side. And they've since gone back and added some ablative in that area on some of the future ships. But it basically, it just seems like having the nose unprotected with tiles seems a little odd. So maybe they don't intend to bring that ship back. Maybe they intend to dump that in the ocean somewhere. If that's the case, why does it have tiles in the first place? It should, look more like, ship 26 or 27 did, where just no tiles, no flaps. So there's a lot of questions, I guess, with that, but it does seem that in order for them to check the boxes for what they want to test during that flight, that they most likely would need to dock to the nose, like what is shown. That way they can do some of those engine tests with Orion. So it's going to be a little interesting. I'm expecting that the ship will probably not look like a fully tiled ship in the end.
Alrighty, and just to maybe recap, Ziggy was re-asking that question about the being able to see it, and I'll just expand a little bit. The Starship is a massive vehicle, and obviously, since when it blew up, you could see it for miles, or hundreds of miles. But the point I was making before is that because of it's daylight and it's not easy to pinpoint. If you have tracking and stuff, you can see it, but you need to know where to look, and you have to have kind of a telescope, depending on how far away you are on that predication. Moving back to the launch site, nothing specific, but Troy Rupert was asking about do we have any kind of ETAs for, let's call it Pad 1A East or 39A or 37, etc. Anybody have any guesses?
I mean, do you
No.
mean like when we expect the pad to be like completed and ready for
Yeah,
launch?
well, somewhat operational at least, yeah.
I mean, 39 is definitely in the lead for all the pads. I mean, I think that by the end of this year, 39 definitely could support a launch. I just question whether or not they would do one from there. Just thinking about the availability of vehicles to be launched there. I mean, we're kind of right now they're definitely vehicle limited. They're not pad limited, and that problem is just going to get worse if now you're launching vehicles from two pads, but you can't build them quick enough to use them. So um, I think a launch from 39A probably depends on how the next two Starship flights from Starbase go, because I have a feeling they're not going to launch from 39A until they know they can at least get the booster back and reuse the booster. So until we've caught a booster at Starbase, I don't think there's going to be a launch from 39A.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I feel like 39, I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe see a booster get there and do some testing, maybe see a static fire. I think launch is probably early next year ish. Again, the how things go in the next couple flights really kind of determines that, because if they end up having a failure where all of a sudden more vehicles are needed here before it to kind of prove out catching and all that stuff is really going to make that there. And then 37, I mean, is just getting there. Pad 1 is going to be sometime maybe late next year. And then, like you were talking about earlier about the SQD arm, the uncertainty of whether it's going to drop down for version 3 or go where it currently is for version 4, that's going to be a big driver on when that's going to be operational, especially if they were to configure it only for version 4 and how quickly we're going to transition out of 3 and go into the taller booster.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a situation like they did with version 2 where they have like a version 2 ship that's technically on, I don't know how to even describe it, because it's technically there wasn't really like a version 2 booster, but there kind of was. It was kind of a renaming after the fact, it almost seemed like, but they could technically fly a version 3 ship probably on a version 4 booster. So instead of lengthening the ship, they just lengthen the booster, and technically your dimensions work out that way. So you could have a version 4 booster with the existing ship kind of launching on top, because the SQD, relative to kind of the bottom of the ship, the SQD we don't think is going to move unless it does for tanker reasons. Maybe it does, but yeah, they could potentially do that. And we know that the version 4 booster at least depends on Gigabay, because they can't actually build the booster tall enough in Megabay 2 right now in order to do that. So Gigabay has to come online first, then we can really dig into version 4 vehicles. And timeline wise, it kind of seems like like Pad 1 could be set up for version 4, but there's a lot of variability and kind of a lot of things moving in that direction.
Yeah, my personal hope is that they'll add another hinge point and they can drop it down and not essentially put it on hold until version 4 booster is available. But I think that's probably going to come once. Obviously, it relies on Gigabay, but I just have my doubts on how quickly they're going to just phase out version 3 and go straight into version 4 booster, even though it probably makes sense to do so.
Because the other part to consider too is that there's going to be a downtime at a pad in order to convert it from version 3 to version 4. So do you get pad 1 up and going for version 3 and then convert pad 2 to version 4 and then use pad 2 only while you then convert pad 1 back to version 4, move the arm up, So there's a question of, do you take that many steps in the downtime, or do you just make pad 1 version 4 from the get-go, and then you only have to convert 1 tower? So we'll have to see. I mean, it's just a game of, when do they want the downtime and how much of it do they want?
All right.
Cool.
And switching up a little bit, we were talking in chat a little bit earlier, and I know Zach has talked about this as well, but it's a simplistical idea of the differential between Massey's or McGregor's style flame trench and the current ones. And the question from SG Mark 1, wouldn't a single exit flame trench would be better? No need for a ridge cap.
I think I think that's a lot of energy to deflect out of one side. There's a lot of shortcomings with that. I mean, technically speaking, the ridge really isn't a huge deal. There's, the engines are not firing directly on the top of the ridge. I mean, we can actually even see that with the in the latest SpaceX video when they showed some of the deluge testing. You can actually see a strip on the very top of the ridge cap that actually doesn't have any like water protection on it. It's kind of like a it's almost like a bald spot really, but it kind of shoots water in either direction and not straight up. So you know that that top part isn't getting exposed to significant heating or direct energy from the plume. And then we've seen now, through multiple static fires in one launch that the very top of that ridge isn't actually, damaged or burnt or anything. So it's the ridge really isn't the problem. And I think that they would have issues trying to deflect that much energy or especially de-energizing, because that's kind of what you really have to do is you're trying to de-energize the plume as quickly as possible. And the only way to do that is to inject water into the plume, and when you have a dual-sided flame trench like this, you actually have more surface area to inject that water. So it works out to be a lot better, even though it kind of looks like there's more complexity with a ridge cap.
All right, and moving on a little bit, Crayman is asking about on the live streams. It seems they added 2 wall sections on the 3rd layer prefab trench walls, Pat A. 1 east.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see. I noticed it's the end ones. I think the middle sections. I think the next level is the actual walls that go between the legs. So I'll be curious to see how they progress in there. But I saw that over in one of the other servers.
What I overheard about at the 3rd level.
Yeah, I think that it's both ends of one of those walls. I'm not sure exactly which one, but the far left and far right seems to have a 3rd level panel installed now.
Cool.
I'll just point out that we now see the holes, which I'm sure was pointed out and I just missed it, but we got the holes.
Yeah,
it's a good angle to actually see it. But yeah, I think we had noticed it. Was it last five or was it 2 flyovers ago? And those were installed. I know they've been there for a little bit, but the straight downs make it hard to see with the scaffolding, especially the lower ones.
My fault. I was a bit busy.
No, it's all good.
Yeah, I think we were waiting on the top one for a while with the single hole. That one was missing for a bit and then showed up finally.
Okay, thanks a bit, dudes.
All right. Oh, we're not done yet. Nose cone jail. What is the realistic turnaround time for Launchpad? Rapid usability suggests 1 hour, or it's been bantered about, from Elon about the 1 hour thing. Is that even realistic?
Well, not from the same site, but definitely over 3 or 4 different sites. I could imagine that happening.
Okay, so we're not expecting booster being caught, placed on the pad, inspected real quick as the ship's coming back, 90 minutes later, put on the booster, refilled and gone. We're not expecting that to be a thing.
I think from a material standpoint, they'll probably be able to construct a pad that can support that kind of a turnaround. Now, I don't think you're ever going to completely alleviate needing to do maintenance. I think that's maybe one thing that kind of gets lost in the details is you're going to have maintenance done at some point on these pads. But in terms of pad 1, they basically had to go back and re-weld part of the legs because it would burn off the steel, every launch. I don't think we're going to necessarily have that problem with this pad. I don't think there's really going to be, any limiter on from a material standpoint for them to be able to, relaunch again in an hour. Inevitably, there will be more maintenance, but I think the primary, limiter for at least right now will probably just be the availability for commodities. I mean, you could think about, launching every hour means that you need to have 24 launches worth of commodities available, which is a lot. Granted, they can, make some commodities, with the oxygen, in, maybe eventually the methane, during the day while they're still launching, but you're going to, eclipse that point. So they're definitely going to have more on the commodity side for the propellant and whatnot before they really, I think, reach that time duration.
All right. DMHMT. Question. So the trench we thought was being dug in front of the isolation and purging was in fact just support for the floor or that area as it gets upgraded?
That trench is what we suspected is a new pipeline that is used for the return of liquid vapor from ship, like they do with the booster for during chill down.
It's not hooked up yet, eh?
No.
Yeah, I think that's.
So
I think people were expecting that to be used during this launch attempts, but we kind of suspected that it was not hooked up yet fully, and that we would see the exact same thing. Which, if I recall, we did see the tower vent still doing pretty much the exact same behavior as the last launch.
yeah, that got me confused too till I saw this photo. I just haven't hooked it up yet.
And I'll ask this, but good.
We did notice though with the booster side when they did the static power, they were using these tanks to reclaim the oxygen rather than using the cannons. Yeah, is that right?
Yeah. And I think even during launch they did too. I don't recall there being much venting out of the cannons during launch either. Well, the aborted launch, I should say. Attempt.
Yeah, launch attempt. Yeah. Not even post-launch yet either. They're using them yet. Like I figure they still might use them to drain pipes as once they're finished detanking, I guess, whatever. Okay, thanks for. Oh, sorry. When I say thanks,
Yeah. Anyways,
I mean,
hold up.
ask the
hold
next
up.
question. But
Yeah. So DMHMT was talking about the trench in front of the tanks. Yes, where the sheep pile's going in.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
I'm not sure that there was ever really much of a. I mean, that trench is as it I think has always been. It's just collected some water. I'm not sure that that there was even really a true trench there.
you can see it here. It doesn't look like it's got anything in the bottom of it here.
Yeah, I think
But over here,
we suspect that that's going to be for the propellant lines to go to pad 1 when they reconfigure, but it's still definitely a work in progress.
yeah, I think we'll see. I'm sure we're going to see another row of sheet piles yet, aren't we? Excuse me.
Yeah, I would think so.
Well, we saw. What am I trying to think here? Oh no, that was the pipes. Water deluge pipes were on the racks. I was gonna say we saw them do that on the racks too. They have not done that. So I'll ask this one. I don't know if you want to answer it or not, but the question is from Peachy BX61P. I'm sure that's a thing. I'm not translating my mind right now. The turbo pumps use a film of prop as a bushing. What is used during the time with no high pressure prop available? As far as Raptors.
I'm going to pass that question on.
Guess I'm probably not not the best person to discuss those sort of details, but if I understand the question correctly, they're talking about the bearings for the pumps in the Raptor engine and how they use kind of a layer, not really a layer, but it's kind of a buffer to keep kind of the bearings in suspension. There's like a fluid that would run through there. My understanding is that it would have the required pressures before fluid would hit the actual like impellers and the bearings through other commodities, but yeah, not totally qualified to answer that specifically.
Yeah, I was going to go with even if we were maybe not actually say that anyways, depending on the detail of what that might imply. Gonna move on back to the concept we're talking about in space with Orion. Why not a dragon style nose cover? for Starship.
Like a
I
little
mean,
lift up lid.
Yeah.
I feel like it kind of would require one. I mean, unless it kind of goes back to the whole the meme about make it more pointy. Unless they can have a super blunt, exposed adapter on the tip of the ship, as it's going through the atmosphere, during launch. I'm kind of skeptical of that. I kind of feel like it would have to be a dragon style, cap that would open up, which obviously the render, didn't depict. But um, I also kind of feel like that's partially why we are likely going to see some more nose cone testing, in the nose cone jail, or why they are making some modifications. It does seem like um, some of the hardware that's been showing up at Massey's could be related to testing a nose cone related to Artemis 3, specifically without the header tanks and, extra forces acting on the nose without that reinforcement from, pushing Orion around.
Alrighty, and just really quickly, back to the previous concepts. We don't have any information about tomorrow as a no-go yet. We're just still waiting. Is that kind of our stance?
Yeah,
Well, we need
there's been nothing officially announced, but we can we can see with our own eyes on the live streams that there's not a lot of activity that you would expect to see if they were going to rush the vehicles out there and stack them. So at this point, again, not official, but I would say it's at least a push to Tuesday.
they got like about 24, 30 odd hours before launch, haven't they? As of now.
Yeah, their website's still counting down at 27 hours, 27 and a half hours right now, but until they decide on a different time to reset that, I guess we'll find out when they change it or announce something.
It's always
Alright.
quicker to like take stuff apart than it is to put it back together. So I mean, not that they need, hours and hours and hours to get the vehicles, rolled out and stacked, but I don't think they would want to rush that, especially if they're not ready yet. So that's kind of the big indicator.
I'm really surprised if it moves out to Wednesday, to be honest, or even Thursday yet.
Alrighty, and then Crayman was asking, and we had specified this previous weeks about the launch deck. But have you observed more deluge water from the corner of the top plate that needed more holes?
I think this corner.
I guess I haven't really seen it. It's kind of hard to tell. I mean, this is probably the best view that we've had. I mean, the stuff in the SpaceX documentary is probably not the best to use because it was a mix of kind of old and new stuff. You could kind of see, whether it was pre or post launch from the last launch. So it's hard to tell, I guess, what's source of truth. This is probably the best view that we have of the current state of the deck and what water launching out of it looks like. But it's really hard to tell, I guess, if they've added more holes there or not. I'm not sure if we've actually seen any evidence on the surface of the deck. I haven't seen any images that indicate it clearly. But anybody else?
Nope.
Yeah, I'd have to do an A/B. I haven't done it yet from when they did that versus a previous launch of this launch, and see if there's some sort of water plume that we can see that's greater or whatever. But it's very difficult to see minor details like that when that's going on. So I did. Oh, we should probably point out. I don't know if y'all pointed this out. They added some cladding at the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty sure that's
They
new this
did.
week. I wasn't elapsed last week or something.
Yeah, no, it didn't. I checked last week's photos. They weren't there last week. It's a good
Yeah,
photo here,
they were
too.
yeah, those panels were stacked on top of that expansion loop cover last week during the previous flyover.
Do we think that's a wraparound issue or just in case issue? Or
It seems like they've got some stuff on that inner wall, and it was likely experiencing some effects from the trench, especially as they throttle up and start lifting off. You've got a lot more shock waves that are going to be forming. The water is able to detonate, a decent amount of it when it's in the trench, but after you lift off, your shock waves really start mixing in the air, and you've got a lot more, effect in that area. So it probably was also some wraparound as it comes out of the trench. Maybe there's some suction or heat exposure. There could have been maybe some wires got a little toasty in there, temperature sensors. But yeah, that shielding should just protect some of that stuff on the inner wall.
That's where the hydraulic unit is, isn't it? Behind there, or is that around the corner? It's here, isn't it?
Yeah, the hydraulic, the HPU is there as well.
Yeah, and this part is a good part showing that is, isn't it? That's a trench full of water, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want
And,
to say Zach pointed out that they do that intentionally, if I understand
Yes.
correctly, for the launch, or static fire for that matter.
I agree. And they had, before the launch, they had plenty of water in the retention pond. Hey, does that mean a retention pond overflowed after launch? I wonder. Not that it matters.
Well, I mean, everything overflowed. Look at the photograph.
Yeah. And even after that one little tiny bit of engine start, there's still some water in the trench post launch. Yeah, overflow. Yeah, what am I talking about? There's water everywhere.
Since we're talking about stuff that we kind of were backtracking, if you go up towards the pad to tower by the roof for Tower 1, to the right on the property line, you can see two of the back section walls are there, and the other two and that middle wall for the Drawworks bunker arrived on Friday as well. So I think all of at least the first level uprights are now here, because those four small embeds are those posts there that we've seen for quite a while.
So that's this piece, and that's this piece, yeah.
Yeah, that's where they would
No.
go. At least
Yeah.
a portion of it, yeah. It
Thanks,
is kind of
BJ.
interesting. I can't remember for 37 how that tower base is configured. Is it the same as Tower 2 here at Starbase, where it's fully steel, or is there some concrete on 37's base?
Pretty sure it's the same as this.
Yeah, yeah, it's the same as Tower 2. Yeah.
Okay. It's interesting because like 39A, the tower that they built there used a different style base than Pad 1 here at Starbase. They changed some stuff. They went like I think more concrete oriented Drawworks area there at 39, and then they went to a different style here at Pad 2 with kind of that full kind of steel cladded speed core type design. And then we're seeing kind of an additional kind of hybrid version of that now going in for Pad 1 here. So there's like a couple different combinations of how they are doing these, the Drawworks area for the tower bases.
Yeah, moving forward now, there seems to be following this, standard IKEA flat pack sort of style, where they're all going to be the same and all rock up in like basically like an IKEA piece of furniture.
It is interesting though that this tower base just has like the one beam in the corner, whereas on Pad 1 they're going to have multiple vertical beams to support the floor. Instead, you see, there's basically just the one beam in the corner and then along the sides, and then the upper floor has the two beams, but over on Pad 1 they're going to have multiple columns to support that.
Well, and to go on that, those two short beams that we see on Tower 2, those were actually retrofits. Those were not initially there, and we can obviously see that they've continued those for the new version on Tower 1, because those two columns do exist. But yeah, we've got the extra legs that go all the way to the ground now as well. So just another iteration.
Someday they'll build one of an exact copy. Until then, they're all kind of hybrids and modified.
Yeah, because 37 probably has those extra pieces on it here, so to make Pad 2 or so the Tower 2 and 37A are not exact carbon copies, but close.
That would be good to see all the towers being built the same. Okay, so thanks for those answers, and thanks about dudes. Any more questions?
We're clear.
Alrighty, so
Just
what?
Martin just Martin just did a $5 pound for Choo Choo.
Choo choo, that's very good. Awesome. We'll support all the support there in chat, thanks, and activity in chat. It's a bit of a quiet day in chat as far as numbers. All right, so a little bit of a spoiler. Is that we have some photos from 39A, which we were thinking about doing today's show, but today's show is well and truly run its time, so we're going to do a show and tell for the Patreon members, pretty sure Monday evening. Now, this is all depending on launches, obviously, so I'm pretty sure Monday evening will be clear. And then depending on launches, we're still going to do the Tuesday expanded show, where once again, depending on the launch. And then Wednesday, perhaps depending on launches again, we're going to maybe try and do a complete stream of these images. So be sure to keep your eyes out for that. As it turns out, we really didn't have time to view them today anyway. And they're brought to us by the wonderful event dudes here in the chat on the BC today. So excellent effort. The amount of time and effort event dudes went into all the rules and all the regulations and everything is quite intense. He's looked at every avenue. We've done previous flyovers and there's been no recourse or no negative feedback from NASA or Department of Defense or any of the agencies to do with Kennedy. So we believe we're totally in the clear there. So we're going to continue on with showing the photos that we get from Event Dudes. So yeah, real huge thanks everyone. Can thank Event Dudes for going way above and beyond and getting another set of awesome images from Florida. So we'll be seeing those through the week as the time comes available around the launches. So keep your eye out for that. Okay, and with that, first up, I'm going to congratulate Silver Sixstones on his awesome debut for Starbase Weekly. You've done a fantastic job today getting everything to work, all the bells and whistles happening, and no breaks in the streams, and the audio was awesome, so everything worked really well there for you. Good on you. I know it's always a bit nerve-wracking for the first time. You've done really, really well. And so thank you, BJ, for being with us today.
Thanks, and like I said in the intro, thanks everyone for joining us. I mean, it's great to share all these images and all the things that go along with it, and we'll be rooting on for another launch attempt this week. And if you really want to get an advanced look at some of those other images from the Cape, the Patreon members, it's already live, so you can do that. And stay tuned for when we cover those in show and tell and in a public stream. Then don't want to miss it.
Absolutely, and it's always a pleasure, Ryan Hansen. Your knowledge, because of the amount of work you've done with 3D modeling, this site in particular, your knowledge is awesome. It's awesome you get on the streams and help us with a lot of the questions and the conversation. So thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, no problem. It's always exciting to get on here and discuss a lot of cool stuff with people who know their stuff. And yeah, hopefully we can get another launch here within the next week, and hopefully it's a success, and we can move on to hopefully starting to catch some boosters. I think it'll really start to be cool once we're catching vehicles again and able to launch a lot quicker. So yeah, a lot of cool photos of the Cape too. I know I've seen some previews, so a lot of cool stuff there that people will be loving to see.
I think BJ mentioned it's got a bit the audio on my end is a little bit funny at the moment, but yeah, there's for the Patreon members in Patreon Lounge. Yeah, there's the link to the Cape photos. So yeah, once again, thanks to Event Dude, sorry, for not only adding to our media, but also today your donations and questions, and also adding a lot of information as well. You add a lot of information. You're a very valued member to the channel, so thank you for today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Had a little bit stumble there in the beginning, got that taken care of, so everything else went pretty good, I think. And yeah, really hoping that SpaceX rolls their magic 8 ball, and they're talking about launching here pretty soon when they got stuff figured out. And of course, KSC was amazing, and should have some ground shots as well coming out pretty soon as well.
Oh, so you took ground shots too there. That's right, on the bus. Yep, cool. All right, so how's it going? I'm going to mess this up. Most engines cut off. Stage separation confirmed. Lovely bye. Just wait to see when we're clear.